Hi everyone. So today I want to talk about mind and body relationship. Um, in the East, for as long as we remember, um, we have understood the way our mental and spiritual bodies inform and talk to physical body of everything that is going on. This is almost new to Western science, and they're just getting started to talk about how gut is our second brain and so on. So every organ in the body corresponds to the energy of a certain emotion, and every disease comes from an imbalance in some organ or the energy channels that are around it. This can be also reversed, meaning an imbalance in an organ can also show itself in a form of an emotion. So this, of course, can become a vicious cycle if it's not taken care of properly, if it's not dealt with properly. We obviously need our emotions, and when they're not extreme, they're fine. It is only when they become extreme or repressed or expressed without control or out of context that they can become harmful to us. Grief, for example, is the emotion that impacts lungs and large intestine. When we feel a loss of any kind, we often feel drained and it's difficult for our bowels to function properly. Now, it all depends on how we deal with grief. Grief can stay with some people for a little while and can go unresolved until they decide to release it. When grief is unresolved and becomes chronic, then the, uh, the they face lung key energy deficiency. The person will face lung key deficiency, and so if this is prolonged, then it could eventually interfere with lung function and oxygen circulation. And it's a really good idea, and it's important to deal with grief properly and give ourselves a bit of space to deal with painful events rather than stifling them. In times of grief, increase the pungent foods that you eat in your diet, and eat white colored foods like onions and daikon radish and garlic and white rice and white mushroom and so on, and stay away from dairy products and fatty foods. The other emotion is worry. Worry is the emotion that impacts spleen and stomach. Worrying can weaken our digestion. Sweet foods are good at times like this, and as well as orange and brown colored foods like sweet potatoes, pumpkins, ginger, figs, dates, carrots, and so on. But stay away from raw and cold foods and cold drinks. Another emotion to talk about is fear. Fear is the emotion that impacts kidneys and the bladder. This emotion is very much needed for our fight or flight response, but we need to deal with it properly. Kidney issues often happen when we are dealing with fear, but this is where the term "I was so scared that I nearly peed my pants" come from, basically. So um, when there is an extreme fear, the key energy in and around the kidneys become out of balance. At time of fear, eating salty food is recommended, as well as walnuts and black beans and blackberries and so on, but stay away from meat, dairy, and sugars. The next emotion is anxiety. This emotion can impact few different areas. It can impact the lungs, and then you will experience irregular or shallow breathing. And if it impacts the large colon, the person can suffer from ulcerative colitis or IBS. Kidneys and bladder also can be impacted by this emotion. So keep in mind that our adrenals regulate our stress reaction, and when adrenal problems become chronic, they can cause anxiety. So this is the reverse version of it. So anxiety can also come from liver imbalance because of the fact that someone has held onto an anger or irritation for way too long. Because anxiety impacts the spleen and stomach as well, the person experiencing this will also feel bloated after eating. And foods like celery and tangerine and chamomile are quite helpful at the time, and stay away from alcohol or caffeine or any other stimulants. The next emotion is anger. So anger is the emotion impacting the liver and gallbladder. Rage, fury, and aggravation can indicate that you have too much of this energy in you. When liver is impacted, the person will feel headaches and dizziness, and if it impacts the gallbladder, he or she will have feelings of resentment, frustration, and irritability. It's a good idea to increase the green food consumption at a time like this and stay away from dairy, alcohol, and fried foods. Now, last but certainly not least is joy. Joy is an emotion that impacts the heart and the small intestine. When we feel true joy and happiness, we are nourishing and feeding our heart and small intestine and the energy that it requires to function at its best. So at times like this, we feel mentally clear and we are able to process experiences we are going through with clarity. The heart will suffer when we do not introduce enough joy to our lives and we become mentally chaotic and don't have a power to do anything, or we feel like we don't have any power to do anything and we don't get good sleep. Just like any other emotion, joy also needs to be experienced in balance. Mania, which is obsessive joy, can also be due to excess and scattered heart energy and can lead to severe mental and emotional disorders. Bitter and red colored foods are very good at times like this, and try to stay away from sugar, spicy food, and or vinegar. Once again, all that I have talked about here are for informational purposes only. Please ensure to check with your healthcare provider before practicing anything that I might have suggested here. Educate yourself about your body and live fearlessly. I'm sorry, please forgive me. I thank you and I love you. I love you all. Be the light.